Yotesam and Beis, 3 lines from the top. So we're quoting from the Mishnah. The Mishnah, we so far all we did was the first line in the Mishnah. Now up to the second line. Kache kachim chutz l'klayim. Someone eats kache kachim. There's some kache kachim that a kayin could eat, but he has to eat them in the Beis Hamikdash. Chutz l'klayim is outside of the Beis Hamikdash. Kachim kalim or ma'aser sheni chutz l'klayim. Kachim kalim don't have to be in the Beis Hamikdash. They have to be in Yerushalayim, as well as ma'aser sheni also has to be in Yerushalayim. They're all going to get. They're going to get Makkos. Say something? Just a noise. Okay. We already said this in the first Mishnah in this parak. The beginning of the parak, we said Ma'aser Sheni that was and Hekdesh, which is not relevant here, but Ma'aser Sheni that was not Padui. If someone eats it, he's going to get Malchus. Our Mishnah, which is the second Mishnah, it's talking about Ma'aser Sheni that's tar, and the person is tar. V'ka achel chutz l'chayim. The Bach says it's talking about v'ka achel chutz l'chayim, where he's eating it outside of Yerushalayim, which is the standard. That's what we assumed we were talking about. Reisha, the first Mishnah, is talking about an entirely different thing. But Ma'aser Sheni tamei v'gavra tamei. V'ka achel leib Yerushalayim. We're talking about he's in Yerushalayim, but the Ma'aser Sheni, it became already Ma'aser Sheni, and he's in Yerushalayim. So now it's the kedusha of Ma'aser Sheni, and he's going to be chayiv malchus for eating it, either if he's tamei or if the Ma'aser Sheni became tamei. So how do we know that there's a lav for eating Ma'aser Sheni b'tumah, where he's tamei or it's tamei? The Tanya Rishon bi'arti b'menu b'tamei. The Torah says this is part of the nusach that. As you know, there's part of the Trumas and Maasros are. It's always good to review them from the beginning, right? There's Truma, that's the most culture goes to a Kohen, and it can only be by a Kohen. Then there's Meiser, which goes to Levi. You take from the Meiser, Trumas Meiser. Then there's Meiser Sheni. I don't think I left out anything. Meiser Sheni in the first and second year of the Shemitah. He has to be, and the first and the fourth and the fifth year has to go Shalayim. In the third and the sixth year, instead of having Ma'aser Sheni, you have Ma'aser Ani that has to be given to an Ani. So at the end of on those years of the Ma'aser Ani, I think it's the third and the sixth year. I think it's after on Pesach, a person has to get rid of all the Ma'aser Sheni that he's had. All the Trumas and Ma'asos have to be finished with. Have to be eaten, or so when that after that time passes, he has to say this nusach of loy bi'arti mimenu b'tamei. I didn't eat any of it while it was tamei. Bein shani tamei vutar, bein shani tar vutamei, and that means on either case whether the person is tamei or whether the Ma'aser Sheni is tamei. So Gemara v'heichan muzar al achila any day. He says, but this loy bi'arti mimenu b'tamei is not a lav. It's a nusach that the person says. So we can see from there that there's an isser to eat it b'tumah. But what do you see azhara that you're not allowed to eat Ma'aser Sheni b'tumah? He says, I don't know. So the Gemara says, well, tumas hagov behedzik.
Again, and from be'artim lo be'artim mimenu b'tumah would not be an azara.
No, because that's what a person says. He declares that I have not eaten it b'tumah, but the Torah doesn't say don't eat it b'tumah. So Zak the Gemara, so Tumas Haguf, where the person is Tamei and he eats the Ma'aser Sheni that's tar, the Hedjik said, Nefesh Tigabay v'Tamei Adar v'Layechel Menakotcher. The Torah says, a person, where's the pasuk? Nefesh Tigabay v'Tama Adar, someone who's Tamei and he touches it, v'Layechel Menakotcher Kiyim Rachatz B'Sar B'Mayim. He's not allowed to eat it unless he washed himself. Unless he had the tefillah, and this is the Gemara, we had this back in Nashim, that the Gemara says that it could only be talking about Ma'aser Sheni because none of the other tumas are going to become mutter by tefillah, just by tefillah. So that's talking about a person who is tamei. Ela tumas atzma mina. And how do we know when the actual Ma'aser Sheni itself is Tamei? How do we know that there's a lav on that? So the Torah says you are not allowed to eat it. Talking about Ma'aser Sheni, you can't eat it in your environs, in your city. You have to bring it to Yerushalayim. The Torah says this is talking about. Let's talk about a Bechar, I think. Bechar Balmum. So Bechar that became Balmum, that anyone's allowed to eat, it doesn't have to be eaten just by a kohen. It says you can eat it anywhere. So Zak the Gemara. So it says on both of them Bisharach. Avatanya the Beir Bishmal. Afilu Tomei Vitar Eichlim Bekaira Achas. In Chayshin. That Legabe Bechar, the rule is that you can eat them together. That even though he's Tamei, and he's going to make the rest of the Bechar also Tamei, it's not a problem. Because we're talking about where it has a mum, and there's no problem. Once it gets a mum, it's allowed to be, it has certain restrictions, but generally it's mutter to everyone. The Ka'amar Rachmana. So then the Gemara says, the Bach changes. Tommy the Sharai Loch Gabi Bechor. I'm sorry. V'kam Rachmana Heich Tommy the Shari Loch Gabi, not Tahar but Bechor. He changed the word Tar to Bechor. That Tuma which is allowed by Tahar Hasam Hacha Loy Techel. Over here we say Loy Sucha Lecha B'Sharecha. That same B'Sharecha that by Bechor was allowed. The Torah is telling you it's going to be Aser over there. So that means even when the Ma'aser Sheni itself becomes Tamei, it's like backwards. We're bringing from a pasuk that's essentially saying that it's allowed to become Tamei, and you can eat it when you're Tamei. We're saying since they both say B'Sharecha, we're importing it over here and putting it into the context over here where the Torah says Lo Sucha Lecha.
As by Ma'aser Sheni, it would not be allowed because it's Tamei, even though.
I'm sorry.
By a Bechar Mum, it's mutter.
Yeah.
But by Ma'aser Sheni, since it's Tamei, even though the person is Tar, then it's Aser.
Yeah, either way. If either one of them are Tamei, either the person or the Ma'aser Sheni, it's going to be Aser. Saktumar, Ominole, the Bar Pediyahu. And where do we know that? Where do we know that in addition to Ma'aser Sheni being Aser B'Achila B'Tumah, and that you can't eat it? How do we know that when you bring it to Yerushalayim, so now it has to be eaten, but it's Tamei, so you can't eat it? How do we know you could still be paided in Yerushalayim after it becomes Tamei? Usually, as we're going to see in this Gemara, you can't be paided once the Ma'aser Sheni is brought to Yerushalayim. It'll be paided outside. How do you know if it becomes Tamei, then you can be paided even Yerushalayim? The Amar Ulaz, how do we know that's true? You're not able to be sa'is but ain't sa'is ela achila. The lashon of sa'is means you can't eat it. Shenema vayisa masa'is me'es panav. He took the food or what he would consume from in front of him. So since the Torah is saying you can't eat it, so what are you supposed to do with it? So what you must do is that you must be able to be paided. Zak the Gemara. Amr Bibi Amr Avas.
And why wouldn't you just say you should let it rot?
Right, because we're saying from the yeah, I mean, I thought of that. I mean, the way I understood it was this is the way I thought about it, is from the fact that our Mishnah doesn't say Yerkavu, it's pasha that we're saying it's not. That's why we're saying Minale. How do you know it's not Padi? But you're asking, why do we say from the pasuk?
See, Kutei Rashi seems to, maybe that's it. Then v'nasata b'kesef.
I guess if you read the whole pasuk, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not the right pasuk. You have to look at the continuation of the pasuk, but I think it says then when you're that far away, then you could be paided. So the mashmais of the pasuk is when you can't eat it, it's either when it's lo yirchak mimcha or when you're not able to eat it. Amra bibi amra vasi minayin lemaisa sheni tar shepaiden oisay afilu ptzia achas chutzulchem. How do we know that maisa sheni that's tar that you could do it even close to Yerushalayim? For the actual lashon of that pasuk that we just saw, ki yirba mimcha derech is mashma only when you're far away. How do we know that when you're immediately outside that you can take it right in there? Even then you could be paid. Because the Torah says, because he can't be size it. That means, from the fact that the pasuk used a lashon, a strange lashon of, I don't know, maybe I'm jumping the gun here. So yeah, because it says that seis is the pashta taich of seis is carrying it. So it's saying because leisuchol seisai, so that doesn't have anything to do with distance. That just means that it's not there. For the Gemara, how could you say leisuchol seisai is telling that? How many like the why we just use leisuchol seisai to tell you that you could be paid it betuma in Yerushalayim, and now you're saying leisuchol seisai you can't carry it is coming to tell you that you can eat it immediately outside Yerushalayim. Why do you use this strange notion of seisei? Just say directly kalisuchal seisei, and then you'll say, and the Torah says you can be paid it. So whenever you can't eat it, you can be paid it. So we use this lashon of carrying. So therefore that tells you that he doesn't have to that he also can be paid it outside Yerushalayim. Let's say since it says seisei, which is a lashon of taking it, maybe it's only telling you this second drasha. We would use the more typical lashon of taking. We wouldn't use the lashon of seisei. Seisei has the multiple meaning of both taking it and of bringing it and also of eating it. My seisei shami natarti. We're able to learn both. Yosef and Chanina of Hoshia become iboya pischad Yerushalayim. So asking this question, if you write at the entrance of Yerushalayim, Ma, what's the din? Pshita. When it says it's pashut. Hu b'chutz u'maseh b'fnim kalto mechitzas. If he's outside and what he's eating is I'm sorry. Hu b'chutz, he's outside and he's carrying a bundle and he's inside and he's inside and he's outside and his bundle is inside. His bundle with the Ma'aser is in Yerushalayim. Kaltei mechitzas. He's inside the mechitzas, so it certainly is going to be subject to the rule and it won't be able to be padi anymore. But what about the other way around? If he's inside, maybe his presence, like we have by your sukkah, right, that you're schlepped after your body. So maybe also legabi this, the food, the Ma'aser Sheni is schlepped after his body. Tanalahu ahu saba b'debei Reb Shimon ben Yochai ki yerchak mimcha hamakom mimuloich. So the Torah says ki yerchak mimcha hamakom from you. So we learned we dash mimcha to mean mimuloich mimiluach, which means from your extended zone. A person has a zone of influence, so includes everything that's with him. So even if the actual Ma'aser Sheni is outside and he's inside, it's going to be included. Boyer papa, what happens if he's holding it on a stick? Is that going to be? That means it's not that he's wearing it, but it's extended away from him like a hobo stick. Is that also going to be in his zone of influence? So Gemara take with that. We don't have an answer. The Gemara will return and come up later, strangely enough, with an answer for at least a Mandamar who has an opinion on this. Amar Ravasi, Amar Rav Yochanan, Ma'aser Sheni me'emasai chayven alav. Mishara pnei hachayim. From what point are you going to be chayiv for eating Ma'aser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim? Now we've always assumed that you're chayav ma'aser sheni for eating it outside of Yerushalayim. What does that mean? Me'emasai. He's saying from the Misharah Pnei Achayim. So the so Gemara my time. The Amakol of Nei Hashem alikecha techalecha uksiv lesucha lecha b'sharecha kol heicha dekrinim b'lev Nei Hashem alikecha techalenu kabi lesucha lecha b'sharecha v'leicha deloikrinim b'lev Nei Hashem alikecha techalenu loikrinim lesucha lecha b'sharecha. So let's see the Rashi on this. Boira Papa. I'm sorry, that's not it. Mahu. No. Mishiyor Pnei Chaim. V'chutzel Chaim. V'asizan hain da'aylev. The mastisan hainu da'aylev after. This is talking about the chutzel Chaim of our Mishnah that says that you're going to be chayiv for eating outside of Yerushalayim is only when he already brought the Ma'aser Sheni into Yerushalayim and then he took it out. That is the case in which you're chayiv for eating Ma'aser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim. But if it was never brought in, you're not going to have the lav of eating Ma'aser Sheni outside of Yerushalayim. Obviously, you're not allowed to eat it, but you're not going to get the Makkos. So Zok Gemara. So he's learning out from this pasuk, but once it's Raya, once it's Lefnei Hashem Alikecha, when it's Ra, which is Misharah Pnei Achayim, as soon as it comes into the city of Yerushalayim, that's when he's going to be chayiv. Okay, so when our Mishnah, right, our Mishnah had said that you're chayiv for eating, a tar person is chayiv for eating outside Yerushalayim, it must be talking about a case who was already in Yerushalayim and then went out. But prior to coming to Yerushalayim, there's no Makkos. Meisvei, Rabbi Yossi Yomer, Kayin should also be yodei te'ena shel tevel. A Kayin that got into his hand a fig of tevel. That the trumas of Ma'aser were not taken from it. Ama te'ena zu trumas of uksa. So what does the Kayin do? He says, I want the truma that has to be, even though he's a Kayin and he's allowed to eat truma, he's still not allowed to eat tevel. He has to separate the truma, and then it will belong to him. Then he can eat it. So he designates. He says, "I want the uketz, the stem of this fig near the stem. That should be the truma. Ma'aser rishon b'tzfayna, and the Ma'aser rishon should be in the north. Ma'aser sheni l'droim, and the Ma'aser sheni should be in the south part of the fig. V'hi shnas Ma'aser sheni v'hu b'Yerushalayim." And it's the year of Ma'aser Sheni, and he's in Yerushalayim. Or it's Ma'aser Ani, and even if he's in Gvulin, like we said before, someone will not be mechoyev for taking Ma'aser Ani as long as it's separated. Then it's just a matter of you're not going to get Makkos for that because that's just a mamadika thing. So what the Gemara says, Akla loika achas. If he eats it, he gets only one. He only gets one Makkos. What did he leave out? He forgot to take off. Rashi says he didn't take off Trumas Ma'aser. Right? He took off the Truma. He took off the Ma'aser Rishon. He didn't take off the Trumas Ma'aser. He has to take off. It would go to him also, but he didn't do it. So he's going to get one Makkos. But Azar she'achal like a shtayim. The Azar who eats it is going to be mechoyev too, because he's not. It already became. He separated some Truma. So eating truma, is a mechiv malchus for a zar. It's like the Gemara time at the East of Yerushalayim. The Mashmai says because he's in Yerushalayim, that's why he's not mechiv malchus for eating the Ma'aser Sheni. Habagvulin like
the zar gets it too. What are the two?
He gets for eating truma and for eating tevel, for eating a Ma'aser that didn't have. Trumas Ma'aser taken away from it. Ma'aser, there's no din that it has to be eaten only by a kohen. The only thing that must only be eaten by a kohen is truma.
Saying even though the guy the zar designated the truma, he's not allowed to eat it.
Right, the zar can never eat truma.
Right. So I'm saying, and what about for them and the other stuff?
That was a kohen.
I'm saying the zar, the Ma'aser Sheni, he ate in Yerushalayim, so he's okay.
Right. So we said that's the second. If he took it. Well, that's the problem. The Gemara says since he's in Yerushalayim, that's why he's okay. Habagvulin loy kushalish. But if he would be outside Yerushalayim, he'd get a third Makkos. So when it says the Avagav de Lav Roy Pnei Chayma, but he hasn't yet gone into the way our new rule that we just learned about Ma'aser Sheni, it has to have gone into Yerushalayim. So how does he get Makkos from it? We're talking about where he went in Einachanami. He's talking about where he went into Yerushalayim and he took it out. Then that's what the mashmois is. Had he brought it in and taken it out, then he'd be chayv. It's like Mari Hachi Ma'ila Memra. What's the chiddush of all this? All this is just a listing of rules that we already know. If you're saying that he's going to be potter, he's not going to have to pay in Yerushalayim if he didn't take it out and bring it. He didn't bring Yerushalayim and take it out. What's the chiddush? So tomorrow, we're talking about this person. This is like reminds me a little of the Pigel Kohen. He managed to make things as bad as possible. He brought in the Tvua into Yerushalayim while it was still Tevel, before anything had been separated. He separated it in Yerushalayim. I'm sorry. He brought it while it's Tevel, and then he separated it in Yerushalayim. So now it has Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim, and then he took it out. And I'm sorry, what the case is not like that. I'm sorry. The case is he took them out before he separated Ma'aser Sheni. So it was only in Yerushalayim while it was still Tevel. There was no separate Ma'aser Sheni. And the question is, we've said this din, that in order for Ma'aser Sheni to get Malkus, for eating it out of Yerushalayim, it has to have been Yerushalayim, but this was not in Yerushalayim with the status of Ma'aser Sheni. It was still Tevel. Sorry.
In other words, he separated Truma, Ma'aser Rishon, but not Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim.
He didn't separate anything in Yerushalayim, but the other things, it doesn't make a difference where he separated them.
Right.
The other things are irrelevant. But the Ma'aser Sheni, I'm sorry, my wife is at a basketball game, of all things. She had to go for an outing, and she is very much out of her element, and she's texting me many messages. What am I supposed to be doing here? I told her she should go to the Abigail's thing and buy a hot dog. So that advice she followed, but she said she found mincha. She wanted, but she doesn't know what else to do. I told her she told me, she called me up. She said they want to go to a Knicks game. She wanted to know two things. First she wants to know, is that in New York? And second of all, is it football or baseball? That was her. Yeah. In any case, so the case over here is right that he went into Yerushalayim, he sat with Tevel with the regular raw produce, and he took it out and he made all the separations before he ate anything. So everything else, it doesn't make a difference where you separate. Once you separated the Ma'aser and the Ma'aser Ani and all that stuff, he's good to go. But the Ma'aser Sheni, had he separated before he came into Yerushalayim, had he not gone into Yerushalayim, it would not be Malkus, because it has to have been in Yerushalayim. But this wasn't in Yerushalayim as Ma'aser Sheni. So the question is, does it get that status? So he says, even though it wasn't separated, it has its own, it still has its existence. It's as if it's separated in order that it should get that din. Is that accurate that he holds like this? No one, so it's a little hard. We start with loy nechleku. They didn't argue on Paris that when loy nigam malachtan, that means Paris that they were not even tevel yet. There's three stages in the life cycle of Tvua. Before miruach, before it gets piled up into piles and smoothed out, it's not even yet tevel. Person is allowed to eat it at achilas aroy. Then once it's miruach, then it gets a din of tevel. and then afterwards you separate it and it gets the din truma and maisa, whatever it is. So this person, Paris that did not reach the level of tevel, and they came to Shalim, that everyone will agree that you could be paid the maisa sheni shalim v'yecha b'chol makom. It doesn't get a din that once it's in Yerushalayim, you're not allowed to be paid it anymore because it wasn't yet. It wasn't even tevel. That where it did come into Yerushalayim, Beishamai says you're out of luck since it was in Yerushalayim as tevel. It's no longer able to be padi because it's because we say this din that matna shalehormu kamisha hormu dami. But Beisil says no. Coming in while it's tevel does not have a din that it was truma or in this case meiser sheni, so it doesn't get the din that you can't be paid it. So and with the paskin like Beis Hillel, so how could Rabbi Yosi? So Rabbi Yosi said, this is Rabbi Shimon ben Yehuda said b'shem Rabbi Yosi. So you see, Rabbi Yosi holds he's saying b'shem Rabbi Hillel. Beis Hillel he should say it's not kamisha hormi damin. These are gedaitach man shalei homu kamisha hormi damin and hol kotua mechitzas. It should be a problem. Amarabba mechitza lechal da'iraisa mechitza liklik derabban. It depends on what we're talking about. Legabi the din that you should no longer be able to make a pigeon. That's a derabban. So that Beis Hillel says. So Rabbi Yosi said b'shem Rabbi Hillel, it's not a problem. It's not color. But legabi the deraisa dikadin, like we're saying that you should get Makkos because it was in Yerushalayim and went out, that he's going to agree that it's Kamisha Hormadam. He gazer abana ki yisa beina betivla. Betivla gazer. The chum were not geyser to say it should be Kamisha Hormadam. Ravina Amar going to knock it bekanya. The tif should buy the papa. He says a different teretz. He says that when Rabbi Yosi says you're going to be mechoyev, when he says originally, Rabbi Yosi said you're going to be mechoyev for eating ma'aser sheni outside of Yerushalayim, that's talking about the case that we had brought as a teiku before, b'shem Papa, where he was holding on a stick outside, and that's what he's saying, it's kolut in Yerushalayim, and that's the chiddush. We had asked what's the chiddush, that's the whole chiddush. Okay, we'll stop over here. Yashar Kayach, greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Pleasure. Have a great night.
You have a good night.